There is a station on the edge of town that no one talks about anymore. When I was a child, my grandmother warned me never to wander past the broken fence near Hollow Ridge, because beyond it lay the old railway line, rusted, forgotten, and cursed. The station itself had been abandoned long before I was born. The roof sagged inward, weeds sprouted through the cracked stone, and the wooden benches had rotted into nothing but splinters. Yet despite its decay, the place was never truly empty. People whispered that if you stood on that platform at midnight, you might hear the faint rumble of a train long out of service, its whistle echoing across the valley, even though no rails remained intact enough to carry it. They called it the Midnight Train, the Phantom of Hollow Ridge, and those foolish enough to wait for it were said to never be seen again. The legend was older than anyone could remember, passed down in hushed tones, always with the same warning: do not go there after dark. My grandmother spoke of neighbors who had vanished, a school teacher in the 1950s who went for a late walk and never came home, two drifters in the 70s, last seen sleeping under the station awning, a teenager in the 90s, dared by his friends to wait for the train, gone without a trace, his shoes left neatly by the tracks as if he had stepped aboard. The police always dismissed it as runaway cases or vagrants moving on, but the town knew better. The tracks weren't dead. They belonged to something else now. I remember sneaking out there once in daylight when I was 12. The platform was smaller than I imagined, barely enough space for a handful of passengers. The ticket booth still stood, though its windows were broken, and the faded board listing departure times clung to the wall. The last etched words read, "Train 101, departure 11:57 p.m." No destination was marked. The air felt wrong that day, still and heavy, though no breeze stirred the trees. And though it was mid-afternoon, the shadows pooled unnaturally beneath the awning, as though the sun refused to touch that place. I didn't stay long. Even then, even as a curious child, I felt like I was being watched. By the time I grew older, the story had transformed into a dare passed among restless teenagers. If you were brave enough, you'd go there on a Friday night, wait until midnight, and listen for the whistle. Most came back laughing, mocking the legend, claiming they saw nothing but rust and weeds. But every so often, someone didn't come back at all. The police wrote those off too, insisting kids were running away to the city. Yet in every one of those cases, someone always remembered hearing it, the sound of a train horn in the distance, long and mournful, drifting through the night air. There was a detail in the legend that chilled me most, one rarely spoken except by the oldest residents. They said the train wasn't empty. They said its windows glowed with yellow light, and behind the glass were faces, passengers staring outward, pale and silent, their eyes following anyone who dared stand on the platform. They never moved, never blinked, just watched, as if waiting for someone to step closer. And if you did, if you got too close to the edge, the conductor would appear. A tall, gaunt figure in a dark uniform, cap pulled low over hollow eyes, always standing on the lowest step of the front car. He never spoke. He only raised his hand and pointed to the door behind him, an invitation, or perhaps a command. No one who followed that gesture ever came back. When I reached high school, my friends began talking about the Hollow Ridge Dare more and more. Marcus, always the ringleader, laughed at the warnings. "It's just a ghost story," he'd say, rolling his eyes. Leah would shiver and insist there was truth in it, her grandmother having told her similar tales. Tyler, the skeptic, with his ever-present phone, swore he'd film the whole thing one day to prove it was fake. I stayed silent then, though deep down, the thought terrified me. I still remember the weight of those shadows from my childhood visit and the feeling that someone or something had been waiting for me to return. But when Marcus suggested one night that we test the legend ourselves, I didn't say no.
Maybe I didn't want to look like a coward. Maybe I wanted to see if my grandmother's warnings held weight. Or maybe some part of me had been waiting all along, pulled by the same invisible thread that had lured countless others to that cursed platform. That's how it always starts, with disbelief, curiosity, or pride. No one goes there truly expecting the train to arrive. That's why it always does.
It was Marcus's idea, of course. He had been daring people into stupid things since we were children. Climbing the water tower, sneaking into the cemetery at night, breaking into the old mill on the outskirts of town. But this time, it felt different. This wasn't just a decaying building or a forbidden landmark. This was Hollow Ridge Station. And even saying the name out loud made Leah's face pale. We gathered in his garage on a Friday evening, the last day before school resumed after summer break. Marcus leaned against his car, twirling a flashlight in his hand with that smug grin he always wore. "Midnight tonight," he said. "We meet at the fence. Cameras, flashlights, and no chickening out." His tone left no room for argument. Tyler, already setting up his GoPro, laughed nervously. "Finally, we'll prove this crap's fake. Imagine the views we'll get." Leah sat with her arms folded, biting her lip. "My grandmother swore her cousin disappeared there," she whispered. "This isn't funny." I wanted to agree with her, but the words stuck in my throat. Maybe it was pride, or maybe the unspoken pressure of Marcus's glare, but instead of warning them, I forced a laugh. "Fine, midnight, but we're staying together the whole time." Marcus clapped me on the back. "Good man, it'll be legendary." As night fell, I found myself pacing my bedroom, staring at the clock. My grandmother had passed the year before, yet her voice haunted me, repeating the same words she had whispered countless times. "Do not go there after dark. If you hear the whistle, run." My parents thought I was at Marcus's for a movie marathon. If they had known the truth, they'd have locked the doors and hidden the keys. But nothing could stop me now, not when I knew Marcus would never let me live it down. We met at the chain-link fence just before midnight. The town was asleep, the streets silent, except for the faint chirping of crickets. Tyler wore his GoPro strapped to his chest, its little red light blinking, while Leah carried a lantern that barely cut through the darkness. Marcus had a crowbar, just in case we need to pry something open, he joked. I carried only my flashlight, hands trembling so badly that I kept it switched off until we were through the fence. The path to the station was swallowed in weeds and nettles, every step crunching over broken glass and gravel. Ahead, the silhouette of the building rose against the moonlight, tall, skeletal, and wrong. Even from a distance, I felt its presence pressing down on us. The air grew colder, too, unnaturally so. Our breaths fogged despite the warmth of August. Leah muttered prayers under her breath, while Tyler filmed everything, his nervous laughter grating against the stillness. When we reached the platform, I stopped dead. It looked almost exactly as I remembered it from childhood, only worse. The roof sagged further, the benches collapsed into piles of wood, and the ticket booth leaned dangerously, its shattered window gaping like a broken jaw. The departure board was still there, though, the same faded letters etched across it. Train 101, departure 11:57 p.m. The hands of the station clock were frozen at that very time. They hadn't moved in decades. Marcus stepped onto the platform first, his shoes crunching against shards of glass. "See," he called, spinning in a circle, with arms wide. "Just another ghost story." But even he didn't sound convinced. The silence here was heavier, suffocating.
Not owls, not insects, not even the rustle of leaves. Just the hollow echo of our movements. We sat on what remained of the benches, huddled together, each pretending to be braver than we felt. Tyler narrated into his camera, his voice trembling. August 14th, 12:03 a.m. No sign of a ghost train yet, just an old station and a lot of bad vibes. Marcus chuckled, but his eyes kept flicking toward the tracks where fog had begun to gather, thick and low. Leah squeezed my arm. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. I held my breath. At first there was nothing. Then, faintly, so faintly I thought my mind was tricking me, the low hum of steel against steel, the sound of a train moving in the distance. My heart dropped. Marcus frowned. "It's probably some freight line further out." But his voice had lost its confidence. The sound grew louder. A whistle echoed through the night, long and mournful, carrying across the valley. Not the bright, shrill whistle of a modern train, but something deeper, older, like the cry of something in pain. The fog thickened, rolling in from the tracks until it curled around our feet, climbing higher with every second. Leah stood, pulling at my sleeve. "We need to go, now!" But Marcus raised his flashlight and stepped closer to the edge of the platform. "No," he said, though his voice trembled. "This is it! This is the moment!" The ground beneath us seemed to vibrate, the hum becoming a deep rumble. Tyler's camera picked up every shudder, the red light blinking like a warning. I felt the cold crawl into my bones, colder than any winter night I had ever endured. And then, through the curtain of fog, I saw it. At first, only the headlight, an orb of pale yellow cutting through the mist. Then the outline of the engine, black iron and ancient, its surface gleaming wet as if it had just clawed its way up from a riverbed. Car after car followed, each window glowing faintly with sickly yellow light. Behind the glass were faces, dozens of them, pale, still, watching. The midnight train had arrived.
The train should not have been there, yet it stood before us in full, dreadful form, rolling soundlessly along broken rails that hadn't seen movement in decades. Its engine was massive, a hulking beast of rusted iron and soot, yet gleaming, slick as though drenched in oil. The headlight burned not with brightness but with a sickly yellow glow that made the fog look like smoke. The platform shook beneath our feet as the cars clattered past, each window lit faintly from within. And behind every pane of glass, faces. They weren't alive, at least not anymore. Pale and hollow-eyed, men and women of all ages pressed against the windows, their expressions frozen in sorrow. Some looked skeletal, skin stretched thin over their bones, while others seemed almost freshly dead, their lips blue as if drowned. None of them blinked, none of them breathed, yet every pair of eyes followed us as the cars passed, tracking our movements like predators waiting for prey. Leah clutched my hand so tightly her nails cut into my skin. "Oh God," she whispered, "it's real! It's real!" Marcus, always too proud, took another step forward, his flashlight beam cutting across the engine. "It's just a trick," he muttered. But his voice cracked. Even he couldn't hide his fear. The train began to slow. The grinding of unseen wheels screamed into the silence, a sound that set my teeth on edge. Fog poured out of the cars as if the train exhaled death itself, swallowing the platform until I could barely see my own shoes. The lantern flickered in Leah's hands, then went out completely, leaving us in near darkness, except for the glow of those dreadful windows. And then it stopped.
The screech of metal against metal faded into silence. The last car shuddered and stilled. For a moment, time itself seemed frozen, the world holding its breath. Then, with a hiss that sounded like a dying man's last gasp, one of the doors slid open. The conductor stepped out. He was tall, impossibly tall, his shadow stretching across the fog-drenched platform. His uniform was from another age, dark, buttoned tight, cap pulled low. The fabric was damp and rotting, clinging to his skeletal frame. Where his eyes should have been, there were only hollow pits that glowed faintly from within, like embers buried deep in ash. His skin was gray, waterlogged, peeling at the edges. Chains hung loosely from his shoulders, dragging across the platform with a sound like grinding teeth. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He raised one long, bony arm and extended a finger toward us. No, not all of us. Toward Marcus. Marcus froze, the flashlight beam trembling in his grip. It's part of the legend," he whispered, as if that somehow made it safer. He forced a laugh that died instantly in the fog. It's just a story." But even as he said it, his feet moved forward as though pulled by invisible strings. Leah clutched my hand so tightly her nails cut into my skin. "Oh God!" she screamed. "Marcus, no!" But the conductor's finger shifted, now pointing directly at her. Her lantern flickered back to life for a single second, illuminating her terrified face before shattering in her hands. Glass rained down. She shrieked, dropping to her knees. Tyler's camera caught everything, the little red light blinking wildly, recording the impossible. His voice was high and panicked. "Jesus Christ, do you see this? Do you—" His words cut off as the fog thickened, swallowing the rest of the platform. I stumbled backwards, my heart hammering. The air was so cold I couldn't feel my fingers. Every breath was agony, like inhaling smoke. I wanted to run, to drag my friends with me, but my body wouldn't obey. It felt as if the world itself had shifted, gravity bending toward that open train door. The conductor lowered his arm and stepped aside, revealing the interior of the train. The glow from inside was brighter now, casting sickly light across the fog. I saw passengers inside clearly, rows of them, dressed in clothing from every era. A woman in a Victorian gown, her neck twisted unnaturally. A soldier with half his jaw missing. A child clutching a decayed teddy bear. Their faces turned in unison toward us, eyes gleaming, not empty now, but hungry. The sound began then, a low, guttural moan, like dozens of voices speaking at once, echoing from inside the train. It grew louder, swelling into a deafening chorus that rattled my bones. Words formed, though they weren't words I understood. They were old, broken syllables, a language that tasted of rust and rot. Leah covered her ears, sobbing. Tyler stumbled backwards, the GoPro falling to the ground, still recording. Marcus stepped forward again. His eyes were wide, glazed as if in a trance. The conductor didn't move to stop him. He simply nodded, slowly, as Marcus reached the edge of the platform. "Marcus!" I screamed. My voice felt like it barely existed against the sound. He looked back at me then, just once. In his eyes, I saw something that didn't belong. His pupils were gone, his irises glowing faintly yellow, just like the passengers in the train. His lips moved soundlessly, but I understood all the same. "It's too late." And then he stepped aboard. The conductor raised his arm once more, this time pointing directly at me. The moment Marcus's foot crossed the threshold of that train, the air around us shifted. It wasn't just cold anymore, it was suffocating, like a vacuum had sealed around the platform. The fog coiled tighter, wrapping around my legs like ropes. The rumbling of the train grew louder, though it hadn't moved an inch. Every window glowed brighter, the faces inside pressing closer to the glass, mouths slowly opening in unison. Leah screamed his name and lunged forward, but I caught her arm before she could follow. "Don't!" I shouted, though my voice felt small and useless in the roar of that otherworldly sound. She fought against me, her nails raking my wrist, tears streaking down her cheeks. "He's in there!" she sobbed. "We can't leave him!" Marcus didn't even look back. He walked down the aisle of that glowing carriage like he had belonged there all his life, sliding past the decayed passengers who turned their heads to follow him. His figure grew hazy, distorted, until he was just another silhouette behind the glass, and then he was gone, indistinguishable from the others, his face pale, his eyes empty. Tyler's GoPro was still recording from the ground, tilted upward so the camera captured everything. He snatched it up, his breathing ragged. We got it on film. No one's gonna believe this, but we gotta go. We have to go now." His words came fast, panicked, tripping over themselves. But when he turned toward the way we came, the fog had swallowed everything. The path to town, the chain-link fence, the trees, all gone. Behind us was only white nothingness. Leah clutched my arm, her body trembling. "We're trapped," she whispered. "We're already on the platform. It's part of it now." The conductor moved again, stepping down onto the wooden planks. His boots struck the platform with a heavy, deliberate sound, though they left no mark. The chains dragging from his shoulders clattered against the boards, their echoes rolling through the fog. Slowly, methodically, he began to walk toward us. Each step felt like a hammer blow in my chest. "Stay back!" Tyler shouted, his flashlight beam trembling as it cut through the fog. The conductor didn't even flinch. His face, or what was left of it, remained hidden in shadow beneath his cap, but the faint glow of his hollow eyes burned brighter with every step. I grabbed Leah's hand and pulled her backward, but it didn't matter. We weren't moving fast enough. Time itself seemed to drag stretching seconds into hours. My legs felt heavy, as though wading through water. My flashlight flickered, then died. The only light was the sickly glow from the train and the faint pulse of Tyler's camera. And then the conductor raised his arm again. This time, his finger pointed at Leah. Her scream tore through the fog, raw and desperate. She tried to run, but the fog thickened around her feet, rooting her to the platform. Tyler and I grabbed her arms, pulling with everything we had, but the force pulling her toward the train was stronger. Her body jerked forward in sharp, unnatural movements like a puppet on strings. Her eyes rolled back, glowing faint yellow as Marcus's had. "No, no, no!" I shouted, wrapping my arms around her waist, digging my heels into the rotting wood. "You're not taking her!" The conductor tilted his head slightly, as if amused. He lowered his hand, but the pull didn't stop. Leah's body lurched again, slipping from my grasp. For a split second her face cleared, her eyes meeting mine with raw terror. "Don't let me go!" she whispered. Her voice was small, broken. And then she was yanked forward with such force that Tyler and I both lost our grip. She stumbled toward the open door, her arms flailing, her scream echoing through the platform. I lunged after her, my fingers brushing hers, only to feel them slide away as she was swallowed into the glowing interior. The door slammed shut. The light inside flickered once, twice, and then Leah was gone. Just another shadow behind the glass. Tyler collapsed to his knees, sobbing, clutching the camera to his chest. "We're next! Oh God, we're next!" His voice cracked, breaking into manic laughter. "We saw it! We saw the train! We're marked! We're already dead!" I grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. "No, we can get out of this! We just need to…" But I stopped. Because behind him, through the fog, the passengers inside the cars were moving. They had never moved before. One by one, their heads turned, their eyes locking on us. Their hands pressed against the glass, fingers long and broken. The moaning sound began again, louder this time, resonating through the platform like the wail of thousands lost souls. The glass shuddered, bulging outward as though it might burst. The conductor stopped only feet away, the glow from his eyes casting faint light across his rotting skin. He leaned closer, chains rattling, and for the first time, he spoke. His voice was hollow, layered as though a dozen voices spoke in unison through a single mouth. The words weren't English, but I understood them all the same. "All aboard." The ground beneath us cracked with a sound like splitting bones. The platform tilted slightly, pulling us toward the tracks. Tyler screamed, scrambling backwards, but there was nowhere to run. We were already caught in its pull. The midnight train wasn't just arriving. It was claiming us.
I don't remember how we escaped. One moment, Tyler and I were clinging to the splintered platform as the conductor loomed above us, his hollow eyes burning through the fog, the ground tilting toward that yawning train door. The next, I was sprawled on the grass outside the chain-link fence, my chest heaving, my throat raw from screaming. The night air was warm again, humid, filled with the ordinary hum of crickets and frogs. The fog was gone. The station was silent. Tyler lay beside me, his GoPro still strapped to his chest, blinking its red light. His face was pale, his lips trembling, but he was alive. We scrambled to our feet, clutching the fence, as though it were the only thing keeping us tethered to reality. Behind us, Hollow Ridge Station sat in silence, a dead ruin once more. No light, no sound, no train. Just an empty platform bathed in moonlight. "Marcus," Tyler whispered. His voice cracked. "Leah!" He pressed his forehead against the cool metal of the fence, sobbing. I wanted to comfort him, but my own chest ached with guilt, with horror. They were gone. Not missing, not hiding. Gone. Taken. "We have to tell someone," I said, though the words felt hollow. "The police, their parents." But even as I said it, I knew how it would sound. 2 kids claiming their friends had been swallowed by a ghost train? No one would believe us. They'd think we ran, or worse, that we'd done something to them. And the footage? Tyler's precious proof? It was corrupted. When we finally played it back in his basement, the screen showed nothing but static. The faint outline of the station appeared for a few seconds, then dissolved into blackness. The audio, however, remained. The moaning chorus of voices, the screech of the train, and faintly Leah's final scream. Tyler vomited into the trash can when he heard it. I shut it off before it reached the conductor's words. For days afterwards, I tried to convince myself it had been some kind of hallucination, a gas leak, mass hysteria, anything to explain away the impossible. But then the dreams started. At first, it was only flashes, the fog rolling across the platform, Marcus's pale, glowing eyes, Leah's hand slipping from mine. But then they grew worse. I dreamed of being inside the train, of sitting shoulder to shoulder with the dead, their heads turning toward me in perfect unison. I dreamed of the conductor standing at the end of the aisle, pointing directly at me, his hollow voice rumbling, "All aboard." I would wake drenched in sweat, my ears still ringing with the sound of the whistle. Sometimes, even when awake, I thought I heard it, faint, far off, carried on the wind. I'd snap my head toward the sound, but there was never anything there. Tyler fared no better. He stopped going to school, stopped eating. His parents thought he was depressed, but I knew the truth. His skin grew pale, his eyes ringed with dark circles. He confessed one night over the phone, his voice barely a whisper. "I see them in the windows. Every time I close my eyes, they're waiting for me." 2 weeks later, Tyler vanished. His bedroom was found empty, the window wide open, the GoPro sitting neatly on his desk. His parents begged me for answers, but what could I say? That a ghost train had come to claim him? That his soul had been marked the second he saw it? They wouldn't have believed me, but I knew. I knew he had heard the whistle, and this time he hadn't resisted.
After that, I tried to bury it. I moved on, or at least pretended to. I went to school. I smiled when people asked about Marcus, Leah, and Tyler. They ran away, I'd say. That's what the police think. But deep inside, I knew better. I carried the weight of it every day, the guilt of surviving when they hadn't. And yet survival didn't feel like survival at all. It felt like waiting. The dreams didn't stop. They grew stronger. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night to find my room filled with fog, vanishing the second I turned on the light. Sometimes I'd hear the faint rattle of chains across the floorboards, though no one else in the house stirred. Once, I woke to find condensation streaked across my window in the shape of a handprint, dripping as if pressed from the other side of glass. Worst of all was the sound, that whistle. It followed me. In the distance during class, beneath the chatter of voices at the diner, once even in church as the congregation bowed their heads in prayer, I heard it, long and mournful, echoing beneath the organ. No one else reacted, only me. The realization came slowly, like rot spreading through wood. The train wasn't bound to Hollow Ridge. It wasn't tied to the platform. It was tied to us. Anyone who saw it, anyone who heard it. We didn't escape that night. We only delayed the inevitable. And now with Tyler gone, I was the last.
It has been years since that night at Hollow Ridge, yet I've never escaped it. I've tried moving towns, changing jobs, surrounding myself with noise and light, anything to drown out the memory. But the whistle always follows, no matter where I go. Some nights it's faint, a whisper carried on the wind. Other nights it's deafening, rattling the glass panes of my bedroom window until I bolt upright in bed, my heart hammering, certain the conductor is waiting just outside. I've learned to fear sleep more than death. For in my dreams, the train always arrives. Sometimes it pulls into a station that looks exactly like Hollow Ridge, with its sagging roof and broken benches. Other times it comes thundering down tracks that cut through places they shouldn't, through my backyard, through the hallways of my old school, even once across my own living room carpet, rails sprouting like veins through the floorboards. Always the windows glow with that same sickly yellow light. Always the passengers press their faces against the glass, watching me, waiting. I know them now. I see Marcus's grin frozen in place, though his eyes are empty sockets. I see Leah's lips moving soundlessly, forever caught in the echo of her scream. Tyler sits near the front, his GoPro hanging broken around his neck, his head tilting in jerks like a puppet's. They're all there, along with countless others, faces I don't recognize, men and women and children from decades past, all trapped together in that endless ride. And then there's the conductor. He appears in every dream, standing on the lowest step of the first car, cap shadowing his face, arm extended in that eternal gesture, pointing toward the open door. Sometimes I swear I hear his voice now, clearer than before, a whisper curling like smoke into my ear. Your ticket is ready. For years, I resisted. I locked myself inside during the nights, surrounded myself with light, with company, with distractions. But the world has a way of stripping those protections away. Friends drifted. My family stopped asking about the nightmares when they realized I could never explain them. Jobs came and went, but the fatigue followed me everywhere. The exhaustion of someone who could never truly rest. I am a hollow shell of who I once was, and still the train waits. And then, last week, I saw it while awake. I had been walking home late, the streets quiet, a soft drizzle slicking the pavement. The city hummed around me, neon lights reflecting in puddles. But when I turned the corner near my apartment, there they were,
rails stretching across the street, gleaming wet in the rain. They hadn't been there a moment before. I froze, my breath catching. The ground trembled beneath my feet, and in the distance, I heard it. The whistle, closer than ever, growing louder, barreling toward me. And then I saw the glow. The train thundered past me, massive and impossible, its windows blazing with that sickly yellow light, faces pressed against the glass, familiar and foreign, eyes locked on me. Marcus, Leah, Tyler, hundreds more. The sound shook the buildings, shattered windows, yet no one else poured from their homes. No one else screamed. To them, the night remained silent. I alone saw it. I alone felt its pull. The conductor stood in the doorway, hand raised, pointing at me. Not inviting this time, demanding. My knees buckled, my body lurched forward, as though invisible hands clutched at my spine. I staggered, clawing at the ground, leaving bloody streaks on the wet pavement. And then, just as quickly as it had come, the train was gone. The rails dissolved into mist. The night was ordinary again. But I knew it wouldn't give me another chance. Since then, I've stopped running. The whistle comes every night now, louder, clearer, impossible to ignore. My dreams bleed into waking hours. Sometimes I see the passengers in reflections, staring at me from windows, from mirrors, even from the black screen of my phone. Their mouths move in unison, chanting without sound. And the conductor, always there, his hand never lowering. I don't know when it will happen. Perhaps tonight, perhaps tomorrow, but I know the end is near. The train doesn't forgive delays. It doesn't lose its passengers. Everyone who sees it eventually boards. Marcus, Leah, Tyler, they all tried to resist. In the end, they belong to it. Soon, I will too. And when I am gone, when the train finally claims me, I wonder who will hear the whistle next. Perhaps you reading this will feel the faint rumble beneath your feet one night. Perhaps you'll hear the call echo through the darkness, soft and low at first, but growing. Always growing. And when you do, remember this. You can run. You can hide. But sooner or later, you'll see its light cutting through the fog, its passengers waiting with hollow eyes, its conductor raising his hand. And when the train arrives, it always takes someone with it. Always.